Hi there. My name's Andy Decker, and I'm a consultant for the Center for Scholarly Communication at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I'm also a doctoral candidate in composition and applied linguistics. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about selecting an appropriate publication for your manuscript. As someone who's transitioning from their first year in a PhD program to their second year, I wanted to kind of focus on publication opportunities that you might be seeing as we're kind of working your way towards what you might do with your dissertation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about edited collections, in-house publications, post-conference publications or PCPs, special interest groups and local chapter publications, as well as, of course, the top tier publications, special issues of those. We'll talk a little bit about open access. And as this started as a handout on predatory publications, I'll talk a little bit about that and kind of direct you towards some resources that would be helpful to help you avoid those, and also mention a few things along the way relating to each of these different types of publication opportunities. Let's start with edited collections. When you're working on coursework, when you get to the end of a course, oftentimes you've produced some sort of paper, maybe a research paper, and maybe some of your classmates or your colleagues are interested in putting those together in some sort of an edited collection, or maybe working with somebody in a third party to edit that, which I think is a really great opportunity. As I say here, an advantage, high acceptance rate. They want you to be a part of this. And with that as well, because often you kind of know the people you're working with, there's a lot of academic freedom there as well. So when it comes to editing, it's really kind of a great opportunity to get some ideas out there without worrying about necessarily the review process just yet. Some big disadvantages there. It may not be technically peer reviewed. So if that's something that you need for a future position, 2 to 3 peer reviewed publications, this might not be what you need. Another thing to watch out for, I'm going to mention this, I think, on the next slide, is these can take time. Depending on who is editing, maybe you're editing. Often it's volunteers, and these can take some time to go into publication. So if this was something that you were hoping to get out there quickly, it might not be the best way to do it. You have to be patient and maybe volunteer to help edit yourself a little bit. And again, something we'll be talking about throughout these publication opportunities is the idea of an impact factor, or who is going to read this? What's the audience for this publication? The audience for an edited collection is often very small. Let's talk about in-house publications. A lot of institutions have an opportunity for people at their institution to publish, and they want you to publish there. So again, we're looking at a higher acceptance rate. Unlike a edited collection, this is going to be on a regular schedule, so you can kind of jump in there and they say we publish once a year, we publish twice a year. Here's the schedule. You can kind of get it into publication, which is really nice, and you have kind of a nice local audience there. Some of the similar disadvantages, this might not be technically peer reviewed either, even though it may be reviewed by peers at your institution. Keep that in mind. So if you have, again, some strict requirements, this might not meet those. However, whatever publication process, it is a part of the institution in most cases. So in terms of the academic freedom of a edited collection, this may be a little bit more less. But again, in terms of an impact factor, if you're hoping to reach people at your institution, this is a great place to start. It's very local, but it can be difficult to find these or to access these at other institutions if you've tried. And just a note here, your institution may actually prefer you to try elsewhere before publishing there if it's something that you've kind of spent a lot of time on. So if you're thinking like dissertation material, you might look elsewhere first. Just a note here, talking about ethics, if a reviewer or somebody helping with your publication ever suggests that you should give them co-authorship for that. Just remember what you've learned from your required ethics training. They shouldn't be doing that. I think for most of these publications we're talking about, we're thinking of single author. That's what we kind of are working towards with our dissertations and what you'll need kind of as you enter into back into the job market. Post-conference publications, PCPs. Maybe some of you have gotten into this already. These were some of my first experiences as I was doing this on my own before the PhD program, kind of between the masters. Now, these aren't going to be peer reviewed, again, usually by volunteers. And actually, if you're looking for review opportunities, experience, this is a good place to start. Oftentimes, you'll maybe attend or present at a conference. Everybody will be encouraged to submit. But as I say, I think I noted this somewhere, they may not have the highest acceptance rates either, depending on space. So if you imagine kind of the conference you're thinking of, lots of presentations. Sometimes it's at 9 o'clock. I've got all these choice. I've got a big book. They can't publish everybody. They're going to publish, I think, who's ready. Hopefully that's you, but that's something to think about. Oftentimes, if you're a graduate student, when you're presenting at a conference, but you may get to put together with others on a panel, maybe in a special interest related to a special interest group, like I'm going to talk about in a moment, or sometimes a little bit more randomly. And when that's the case, sometimes you exchange information. Sometimes people are interested in publishing something together afterwards, and sometimes people are not interested at all. Maybe that's you, because they have things that they need to do independently. Maybe something is grant funded and they're checking boxes. But it's something to be mindful of. Again, when you go to present at a conference, if you are planning on publish, if you're doing it for the publication purposes, you'll want to look into that beforehand, what the process is, and kind of plan ahead. Something that I found that can make kind of narrow this down a little bit is if you go to a big conference, often they'll have, I've heard them called special interest groups or SIGs, is they'll break it into kind of smaller categories of people who are interested in my case, this type of language learning, these types of tasks, these types of materials, these types of contexts. Also in terms of kind of locality, where people are based. So, for example, if I'm thinking here in the US, if I'm thinking of something like TESOL for language learners, here close to Indiana, where I am in Pittsburgh, we've got like a Three Rivers TESOL. And there can be kind of more local or more specific opportunities related to your context. And now these are great. They're almost always peer reviewed. You're going to get to your specific audience that's not, just tied to your institution. Disadvantages, again, the review process is maybe a little bit different than it is for a PCP or for an academic journal. Because you're relying on volunteers. Often you'll be asked to see if you can volunteer as well. And because it is kind of a specific audience related to an interest or a location, it can lower the impact factor a little as well. This is kind of a more friendly warning here. When you are presenting, as you are starting to publish, you are going to get offers or requests to volunteer your time in different maybe capacities, maybe some positions. Some of those take more time than others. And as I note here, some of those are more related to publishing or maybe your interest than others. So think about that before you say yes. And if you do those, it's always okay to continue to do that for as long as it makes sense for you. But I do recommend it. I think a great way to kind of get to know publishing better is to review. And I just found recently a conference that I was interested in. It's a little expensive to attend. If you volunteer to review, they'll give you a ticket to attend. So be looking for opportunities, especially as emerging scholars. Top tier publications. Okay. So yes, as we are working towards our dissertations and publishing what we've done with our dissertations, I think we're all thinking about this. When you get to this point, I think you'll have a pretty good idea where you're interested in based on kind of the references you've been using. these are the articles I read, this is where they publish, this is where I want to publish. When you go for a top tier publication, you're going to get the top tier peer review. You're going to get people that maybe you've read before reading your work. Hopefully, they're being supportive. But even I think a rejection from a top tier reviewer can be helpful for the next time, maybe encouraging, or to help you find the right place for your publication. Of course, they have a high impact factor, but a lower acceptance rate than what I've talked about so far. Now, you might find some opportunities with special issues within these places that you want to publish. So be on the lookout for calls for papers, or like I said, calls for papers for conferences where there might be opportunities afterwards. Great opportunity to reach your specific audience, not only the readers, but also the reviewers. Often they'll have a guest reviewer. Disadvantages, they don't always relate to your specific research interests, so it may be not a good, the timing might not work out, but you never know. It's worth a chance. And it's also good to look at, as you're looking at publications, to see what's being accepted and what those articles look like in the special issues, but also in the usual issues. I put this here. I think this is gaining more and more attention. Something to think about. You want your work to reach people. This might be something that's important to you. Open access publications. Somebody's doing Google Scholar. Are they going to be able to find you? Are they going to be able to read you right now, today? Disadvantage, sometimes that comes with a fee. So it may not be, it may be free to read, may not be free for you to publish. I have heard of some using grant funding for that. But again, just something to have in the back of your mind. Kind of getting to the end of what I've got prepared for you today. Again, this is where I started with predatory publications. We've got some really great resources. I've got a QR code here, or if you just go to our university website, go to the library, search for predatory publications, predatory journals. They've made some really excellent resources that I can't recommend enough. Because we were just talking about top tier publications, you don't have to worry about the publications you know so much. But when something comes in your email that you don't recognize, be wary. Like if there's something interdisciplinary, especially if there's a fee, if it looks unusual, it might be. Ask around. Don't send your stuff off unless you know where it's going. Like I said, there's some great resources that our libraries put together, including I think links to lists of known troublemakers. So take a look there. I've tried to give you just some things to think about. Maybe you're at kind of my place in the progress, this process. Maybe you're kind of a little before me, a little after me. These are just some things to keep in mind. The Center for Scholarly Communication is continuously adding resources. We've got a handout related to this, which I've linked to in the QR code. Again, just take a look at our website, do some searches for the resources we have. We're adding to these all the time. Just a little plug for a nice free clip art that's available to you, irasutoya.com. Been adding a little bit of fun to this presentation. Anything when I want to leave you with, again, there's a lot of opportunities for emerging scholars. Sometimes it starts with a poster presentation or a course paper. When you have something, see what you can do with it. Be thinking about in terms of your 5-year plan. Where are you hoping to put this paper? Where are you hoping to put this paper? My hope is that this resource will help get you started or help get you started again. But that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much and have a good day.